Welcome to Mr. Brown's Basement, a channel devoted to sharing the craft of repairing, restoring, and modifying vintage electronic gear, and other random stuff. So far, I've replaced these two electrolytics and some of the paper capacitors. I haven't got to all of them yet because... Please do not adjust your set. Your regularly scheduled repair will return after this short video. This is an Olympus OM-1 single lens reflex camera. This actually came out in 1972 and production continued all the way up until 1988, I think. It goes to show you that it was very, very popular. This camera set a new standard for single lens reflex cameras at the time. Before this camera, most single lens reflexes were big and bulky and heavy, and this one isn't. In fact, you can fit it in the palm of your hand and grip it very comfortably. Anyway, this video is not to brag about all the wonderful things that the Olympus OM-1 does. It's to repair one. Perhaps another video I will talk about all the wonderful things the OM-1 does and why you should seriously consider acquiring one if you're interested in film photography. Normally, once it's loaded with film, you would wind the film lever that tensions the springs and then push the button that takes the picture. Sounds like clockwork. It is clockwork. This camera requires no batteries to operate. This camera works great. So why is it on my workbench? Well, because its sister is not working so great. This one has a winder on it that winds the film so you can take up to about 3 pictures per second. But it doesn't have a lens. The lens comes off. Let me show you the problem. I'll set it to the same setting. The wind lever doesn't return. And if it doesn't, that's a good way of jamming the camera. What I have to do is take apart this Olympus OM-1 and lubricate, or clean and lubricate, where the problem is, which is right over here. Before you take apart any camera, you have to make sure you have the right tools. This is a Japanese camera. You need Japanese screwdrivers. It will look like a Phillips head screw, but it's not. It's actually the Japanese version of the Phillips screwdriver. And if you don't use that kind of screwdriver, you'll strip the screw. So you need to buy them in advance. The other thing you need is something like a very sharp pair of tweezers or a spanner wrench. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that things that are going to be in the way are gone. For example, the winder, and that comes off just like this. This is a Olympus Winder 1. There was also a Winder 2 and a hard drive, pardon me, not a hard drive, a motor drive, which went even faster. All kinds of accessories. Anyway, don't need this right now. The other thing we don't need is the hot shoe. And this would be to mount an electronic flash, or even a flash bulb. There were different kinds of shoes. This is the most basic one. I think it was called a shoe 1. And there you go. That's part of the shoe. So these things need to be glued back, into here. All right. Never seen that happen before, but there's a first time for everything. I don't think I've used this camera since I went to digital photography about 2003, so it hasn't been used or touched really in about 20 years, and hasn't been seriously used in even longer. The next thing is to decide how you want to set it. Once you set it, you don't want to change it. The light meter, which is the only electronic part, is off, and set it for ASA 100. Just turn this dial after pushing down this lock button. Okay, ASA 100. Now we can start taking it apart. This piece over here is very fragile. You don't want to scratch it. If you do, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to interfere with the operation of the camera, but it won't look pretty. And as you might have guessed, a camera which went out of production 40 years ago, it's hard to find new parts. This is one of the spanner wrenches I'll be using. It's got two very fine points over there, and you can adjust the width with this thumb screw. And you want to get exactly the right width, not too much and not too little. If it doesn't fit in, then you need something smaller. Yes, it fits in. Push down hard so it doesn't skip out. And if it skips out like that, you just made a scratch. Or in this case, I just made a scratch. It's too tight for these. I'm going to break out the big guns here. I'll see if I can adjust it and get the camera open. Otherwise, this will be a very short video. Almost did it again. Okay, I got it loose and I only made a small mess. My apologies to everyone. Okay, I'll stick to radio repair. Second. That's third. Nothing else. Next is taking off this ring. Yeah, that's supposed to come off. And it does. This ring here, which holds in the contact for the hot shoe, that has to come out again with the spanner wrench. Okay, I've loosened it and it's come off. It's bigger on the top than it is on the bottom. Okay, it's only got a couple threads. Next is a couple screws underneath here, and that's where I need my Japanese screwdrivers. That one comes out, and there's one over here too. And if it's anything like the first one, it's going to be good and tight, and it is. There's too much gunk in there, I think. There we go. To remove the rewind knob, a bit of a surprise, you'd think it was the screw, but it's not. Put something in to wedge this, wedge the fork underneath from moving, and then this should unscrew if you can hold it in place. The rewind knob is supposed to unscrew off this stud. In my case, it really didn't want to come. I actually had to take off the camera back so I could get in there to work. The camera back does come off, it's supposed to come off, so you can replace the back with, it's upside down, with data backs and bulk backs. There's a little catch that right there that you can move up and down, and it
causes that pin to retract and allows the back to come off. No problem with taking off the back, just as long as you keep your hands off the shutter. That's that cloth thing right there. Okay, back to where I should have been about half an hour ago. With all those screws and rings out, I should be able to lift this top right off. Now be aware that there is a spring right there, and you don't want to lose it. And also, this thing is jam-packed with wires, so you don't want to break any of them. You just want to take it off ever so gently. And I heard the spring. There's the spring. And here is the top, the inside of the top of the OM-1. And it does look quite dirty, but if I recall, this was a well-loved camera.
Here is an exploded view showing what we've done so far.
I'm going to take a Q-tip or two and take out some of the obvious dust. You don't want to move the switch, you don't want to move the ASA control. This is the part where the problem is. Let me just get the winding lever. Yeah, there we go. This little pin here is the shutter release. Of course, it works better when it's open. It's still not working well enough. These two screws will have to come out. Oh my goodness, it's dusty in there. I've painted the screws so they didn't come loose, and they haven't until now. One and okay, I don't want to strip it. I might have to scrape off a bit of that paint first. That'll help take it out. After taking out this screw, and this screw, and this screw, this whole assembly lifts out, which is nice, because this is where the problem is. But it also lets us see if there's any gunk on the other gears, and if there is, you just wipe it off with alcohol and a swab, and then just a tiny, tiny bit of jeweler's lubricant, Liberty oil.
Here's an exploded view of the film advance mechanism and frame counter.
I took it all apart and cleaned it and lubricated it, and now to clean up the mess I made, getting lubricant all over my fingers and all over everything else. I found this ring here, which I assume is around the hot shoe connector. That looks like a washer for that. And I need that spring, which sits on this post over here. And now I should be able to put the top back on, hopefully. This will want to poke through. The shutter should fall onto this. The ASA that I didn't move should fall onto that. The switch, which I did not move, should fall onto that. But yeah, maybe I should just do a little bit more cleaning of this first because it's yucky. But I'd like to get this back together. Goo Gone removed some of it, and alcohol removed some of it, but there's a little bit which is left. And without trying something abrasive, which I really don't want to do, I'm going to leave that there. It's going to be covered up by the shoe anyway. Something may have actually damaged the finish. I really can't tell, but it's whatever it is, it's not coming off. Bad news is that I can't open up the camera with this. It won't come up. So that means the spring is in the wrong place, which means I have to take this out again and take out these two screws and see what is up with the spring. If things are working properly, as you lift this latch here should lift. Here. It's not very smooth, and I think the problem is here, not there, because it was moving fairly freely when it was apart, and I don't think it's binding on anything. No, it's fine. The spring is there. The issue is this. Whether it's worn or broken, I'm not sure. Anyway, let's see if it will open the back. It's a bit of a drag if it doesn't. Yes, it does. Oh, thank goodness. Will it close? No, it won't close. Okay, yeah, it will close. Now to get all the pieces back on here in the same order, and to get the ring on there. Except for this ring, I've got it all back together. Wow. I hope you enjoyed this Mr. Brown's Basement video. A little bit different, certainly out of my comfort zone. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. And I hope to be making more videos in the near future after what feels like a very long hiatus.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program, In Progress.
And I have to do something with this plastic, which looks awful. But that will be in the next video. Hopefully there won't be any other unscheduled interruptions. Thanks for watching. And in a future video, if you don't know what that is, stay tuned here on Mr. Brown's Basement. Actually, Mr. Brown's Porch.